Shabbos Daf Kuf Chavav. Today's email comes to us from Craig Goldman from West Orange, New Jersey. He says he started off the new cycle with 8-minute daf and eventually made his way to the full daf. And since then, he's never missed a single daf. He would love to be the representative of West Orange, New Jersey. So, Craig, you are the official representative. Anybody that wants to be mishtatif in the Siyum of Shabbos should contact you, and you'll arrange everything. Beautiful. We're talking about window shutters. According to Chachamim, if you have a window shutter sitting right by the window, designated for the window, it's not considered baina. You're allowed to put the window shutter in. It doesn't have to be tied. It doesn't have to be hanging. According to R Eli Stefansky, you need two conditions. The window shutter has to be tied and hanging off the floor. Only then are you allowed to put the window shutter in. Something very similar is called a neger. This is a bolt that goes into the door to shut the door closed, make sure nobody opens the door. According to R Eli Stefansky, if it's just sitting there next to the door, there's an Isser D'Oraisa to insert the bolt in its place. If it's tied, but not hanging off the floor, it's touching the floor, you could only use such a bolt in the Beis HaMikdash. Other places, there's an Isser D'Rabbanan. In Beis HaMikdash, there are no Issurim D'Rabbanan, there's no Shvus in Beis HaMikdash. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's laying on the floor, then even in the Beis HaMikdash, you're allowed to use it, even though it's not tied. And if it's tied, not hanging, then you can use it everywhere. According to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, it doesn't need to be tied and it doesn't need to be hanging. As long as you designate this bolt in your mind, you could use the bolt. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says this halacha even by palm trees, by palm branches that were designated for fuel, and then you decided to designate them for sitting. Just because you did so in your head, that's enough to take them away from the category of muktzah. Rabbi Yochanan agrees to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that you could designate something in your mind, but he says there's one stipulation. Whatever it is, let's say it's a bolt or even a branch, it has to serve as some sort of kli. It has to serve in some sort of way. Rabbi Yisrael Nabcha got up and darshaned in front of the house of the Reish Galus, and he said the halach is like Rabbi Eliezer. When it comes to a shutter, you need two conditions: it has to be hanging and it has to be tied. However, from the final Mishnah in our Masechta, the Mishnah brings a story that they wanted to plug up a window and they used a kli. Now this kli was not tied and wasn't hanging. From the fact that they brought it was an actual story, that's a lot more powerful than halacha. You see that that's how we paskin, because we actually did so in a true story. Says the Mishnah, if a kli, a vessel, you want to be able to move it on Shabbos, it has to have a handle. And Rabbi Yochanan explains that's dafka if it serves as another melacha, for another melacha. Rezi says this handle is only when it comes to a ground covering, but any type of kli doesn't need a handle. So the Gemara explains, when it comes to ground covering, everybody agrees that it needs a handle. And when it comes to kli, everybody agrees it doesn't need a handle. But what the machlekes is, when you put a kli in the ground, do we say that you might confuse this kli for ground covering or not? And with that, we finished the perek kol hakelim, brand new perek mefanim. Says the Mishnah, if you have a room with wheat, hay, you're not allowed to move it on Shabbos because of the exertion that you put out while you move things. In Shabbos you have to rest. However, if you're doing it for a mitzvah, you're allowed to move 4 to 5 boxes. And the Gemara is going to explain whether that's literal or just that's the way we speak, 4 to 5. If you need the room for a shear or for achnasas archim, you could move 4 to 5 boxes. But not more, says the Mishnah, because more than that, more than 4 to 5 boxes would be a tircha, would be too much exertion. The Mishnah goes on to give a list of different things that are not muktzah, such as food that you remove the truma for the kayin, so it's mutter to eat. But food that you didn't take off trumas and maasros is muktzah because it's not permitted to eat on Shabbos. D'mai, food that we don't know if the Amars remove the truma, is mutter. The Gemara will explain. Ma'aser Rishon, that's the 10% that the Yisrael gives off to the Levi, and the Levi removed the truma. The Gemara will explain as well. That's Ma'aser Rishon. Ma'aser Sheni, that's the 10% you take for yourself. That's what you have to bring to Yerushalayim. If you don't want to bring to Yerushalayim, you redeem it. So we're talking about it's redeemed. So it's not muktzah. Hegdish, if you want it, you have to redeem it. Not muktzah. If you don't redeem it, or Ma'aser Sheni that you didn't redeem, it remains muktzah. Says the Mishnah, turmos, type of a bean. If it's dry, it's not muktzah because you can feed it to your goat. If it's moist, even a goat won't eat it, it's muktzah. There's something called luf, which the Tanna Kama says is mukta. Mustard seeds are mukta. Reb Shimon Gamliel says luf is not mukta, since it's raven food, and wealthy people have ravens. Now, a typical person, says Reb Shimon Gamliel, is considered wealthy and is considered a prince because all of Klal Yisrael are princesses. If you have a bundle of straw or branches, if you designate it specifically for animals, then it's not mukta. So Reb Chizda comes along and explains the Mishnah. When the Mishnah says you can move 4 to 5 boxes of hay, the Mishnah was very specific. If it's a small room, you can move 4 out of 5 boxes. You have to leave 1 box worth of hay on the floor, so you don't expose the floor, so you don't come to be mashvegumais to smooth out the floor, which is the isser of baina. If it's a larger room, then you're permitted even 5 boxes. But you have to leave some over so that you're not mashvegumais. If it's a large storage room, it's usher to start removing hay from it, because we go like Rabbi Yehuda, that there is muktzah. In other words, something that was designated as storage before Shabbos remains muktzah throughout Shabbos. Shmuel says no. We're going according to Reb Shimon, that there is no muktzah. Just because it was designated in a certain way before Shabbos doesn't make it muktzah through Shabbos. And when we say 4 to 5, that's just a figure of speech. That's how people speak. So therefore, I could remove even more than 5 boxes. And when the Mishnah says you cannot remove a storage facility, it just means that you have to be careful not to smooth out the floor. But again, he holds like Reb Shimon that there is no muktzah bein hashmashos. Have a wonderful day.